You're about to see or hear Dr. Joe Vitale speak in a way that you've probably never seen or heard him speak before. That's because he gets very personal about some tough times he's been through in his own business and personal life in the past 2 years. You've got to listen or watch Dr. Joe, but then maybe this is the first time you're being introduced to Dr. Joe Vitale. Dr. Joe Vitale is a globally famous author. He's a marketing guru, been in movies, TV, radio. He's a musician. He's actually one of the top 50 inspirational speakers in the world. His many best-selling books include The Attractor Factor, Attract Money Now, Zero Limits, and his latest releases, The Miracle, 6 Steps to Enlightenment, and Anything is Possible. A popular leading expert on the law of attraction in many movies, including The Secret, Dr. Vitale discovered the missing secret not revealed in the movie. He's been on Larry King Live, Donny Deutsch's The Big Idea, CNN, CNBC, CBS, ABC, Fox News, Fox and Friends, and Extra TV. He's also been featured in the New York Times and Newsweek. Now, one of his most recent accomplishments includes being the world's first self-help singer-songwriter, as seen in 2012's Rolling Stone magazine. He's released 17 albums. Several of his songs were recognised and nominated for the Posey Award, regarded as the Grammys of positive music. Well known not only as a thinker, but as a healer, clearing people's subconscious minds of limiting beliefs, Dr. Joe Vitale is also an authentic practitioner of modern Ho'oponopono, certified Reiki healer, certified Qigong practitioner, certified clinical hypnotherapist, certified NLP practitioner, ordained minister, and doctor of metaphysical science. He's a seeker and a learner, once homeless, who has spent the last 4+ decades learning how to master the powers that channel the pure creative energy of life without resistance, and creating the Miracles Coaching and Zero Limits Mastery programs to help people just like you achieve your life's purpose. So let's now meet Dr. Joe Vitale.
Vitale, Dr. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, I've been looking forward to this. This is a great moment. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, the pleasure is all ours. And our audience is made up of people who are interested in or going through right now coming back from adversity or setback of some kind. And that's why it's called the Comeback Coach podcast show. And I've been looking forward to this, and I know I've got audience members and followers who have been looking forward to this as well. So, Joe, let's go back, if we can, backstory. So the introduction has been given. We know that you're a prolific author, 80+ books, 15 musical CDs, et cetera, et cetera. Too many books to mention here, quote unquote, although I wouldn't mind mentioning a few, because I've got over 14 of them. But Joe Vitale didn't start off as Dr. Joe Vitale, and he didn't start off as a prolific author. He didn't start off in life with one of the biggest book collections of self-help books and titles, print, recorded, etc. In fact, you were born in December 1953 in Ohio. Can you take us back to what life was like for a young Joe Vitale?
Well, let's do a little time travel here. Back to the 1950s. Okay. You know, there's two ways to look at this, at least. One is I can talk about a childhood where I was taken care of, given life, supported, nourished, provided with a lot of different experiences, and that's all positive. The other way of looking at it is that it was an abusive childhood. I didn't like it. I wanted to find a way to escape. My first doorway out was through books, because books were dependable, books were my friends, books were always there, and at the library, books were always free. During that journey, I decided I wanted to be a writer, mainly because I already knew them to be friends to me. Maybe I could make friends for other people. And I had decided I wanted to be all kinds of things, a baseball player, a magician, an actor, an attorney, all kinds of things, but it all narrowed down to being an author. And so that became, in Napoleon Hill's terminology, my flaming personal desire. my all-consuming mission. But as you know by now, there was no overnight success, and I don't think there ever is an overnight success. I think we all work for a very long time, and at some point we break through and the rest of the world notices us, but we've been working all those decades in some cases to get to that moment where we kind of pop. So I, in my journey, ended up being homeless in Dallas, Texas, ironically living in the public library in Dallas. It was air conditioned, it had water, it had a bathroom, and it had books. So on one level, it was great. On another level, it was torturous. And after I got through that, I went through poverty in Houston, Texas for a good 10 years. And it's important to realize that during all of this time, I am pursuing being an author. I am writing. I am submitting my writing. There's no internet back then. There's no coaching back then, except for Little League coaching and football coaching. We didn't have it as self-development coaches that I was aware of anyway. And so I'm doing it all on my own. It's a long, lonely, hard struggle. So I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to starve. I know what it's like to have sleepless nights. I know what it's like to go through the dark night of the soul when the dark night lasts a couple decades. And in my pursuit, I did have successes. I had a play produced in 1979, one of the highlights of my career. No iPhones, no cameras, no way to record it easily back then. So I have nothing to relive except the newspaper clippings. My first book was 1984, which was a cause for celebration. I'm finally published, but it was also a reason for being discouraged because I learned publishers are glorified printers and they don't know anything about marketing. But that was another turning point because I learned marketing. I learned marketing, advertising, publicity, and became pretty well known for a hypnotic writing kind of a style and hypnotic marketing kind of a strategy, and used it for my own books. But I didn't get published again until 1995. And by then, I was making a name for myself in Houston, and it was localized. I was speaking in Houston. I was talking about my books in Houston. I was getting a following in Houston. And that's also about the time the internet started to come along. And I was at that point pretty fortunate to be one of the early internet pioneers. Ironically, NASA invited me to come and have a tour of the internet. Now remember, this is the 1990s and the internet is a buzz and nobody knows what it is, but we're all excited about this mystery. And I was writing a magazine column for free, but getting attention because I was doing it. NASA saw it, invited me to go to NASA to have a tour of the internet. So I drove there. Went in a big room with all these people wearing suits, and they had a giant computer in the room, and they had a big monitor, and on the monitor was planet Earth. And they proudly said, we can tell the weather anywhere on the planet over the internet. And I almost burst out laughing. Who cares? If I want to know the weather, I look out the window. And we all know the weather reports are bogus even today. I mean, I've stood out in the rain and looked at my phone and it says, no chance of rain today, as I'm being soaked. So I went back and I wrote an article saying the internet is a joke. You cannot make money on the internet. This is me saying this in 1995. And it got posted on the internet because we had CompuServe back then, we had AOL back then, and more people were crawling onto the internet trying to figure out what it was. And those were the two big doorways. So people would see my article, write me and say, hey, we agree with your thinking. How much do you charge to write a sales letter or whatever? And I realized, wait a minute, I said you can't make any money on the internet. You're finding me on the internet and hiring me over the internet to write their sales copy. And so that was a boost in my career. During all of this, there was a side journey in my life because ever since I was 16 years old, I was reading metaphysical books. And when I was in the public library in Dallas, homeless, I was reading metaphysical books. So there was very much a law of attraction, self-help part of me that I didn't talk about because I thought, well, the people that were hiring me seem to be very conservative. And if I start talking about guardian angels or mind power or law of attraction or kind of woo-woo-ish stuff, they might not hire me anymore. They might, dismiss me. But I did write a little book that I would give to close friends, and it was called Spiritual Marketing. I gave it to Bob Proctor, who was in the movie The Secret, and Bob Proctor announced it in front of a group in Denver, and there were 300 people there, and they all wanted the book. And then a publisher came up and said they would publish my book, Spiritual Marketing. They did publish it. It became my first Amazon bestseller. The New York Times wrote a story about it. A big publisher in New York contacted me and said they wanted to republish the book. That book got renamed The Attractor Factor, which is still one of the great books in my life. And it was that book that got me introduced and invited to be in the movie The Secret. And at that point, we can stop talking because The Secret blew me into outer space. I was already known as an internet marketer, an internet pioneer, and a copywriter and all that kind of stuff with a little bit of an esoteric background that some close friends got to hear about. But once the movie The Secret came out, they're probably talking about me on Mars now because that movie has circulated the planet. It came out in 2006 and has not looked back. I have gone to countries I didn't know existed. I have gone to countries that, we talked about me being born in the 1950s. Russia was our arch enemy. I went to Russia twice so far to speak. And so we used to say the sky's the limit. Well, I'll tell you, Mike, the sky is not the limit. There is no limit. There is no limit.
Good title for a book, Joe.
There is no limit, right.
So many angles we could go from there. Right. I must tell you, I dabble in copywriting, and hypnotic writing was one of the first books on copywriting that I read. And I still say, sometimes in the copywriting group, somebody will say, what's a book you'd recommend or what's the best book? And I pipe up whenever that question's there, and I say Joe Vitale's Hypnotic Writing. And then I say, and by the way, there's only one copywriter that's referenced 3 times in Joseph Sugarman's book, the Adweek copywriting book, which I've got behind me somewhere, and that's you. It's only one. There's only one copy. If you didn't know that, back in the back of the book in the bibliography, there's only one copy. That's you. Okay, well, there's another thing I've got. While we've got you here, there's something else I want to thank you for, and that's for introducing me to Neville Goddard. Now, you introduced me to Neville Goddard and his teachings 10 years ago, and I know that's Neville Goddard's teachings among a lot of other people have had a lot of impact on you, and how Neville talks about imagination. I'd like to come back to that because what we're all seeing now, I know that people will be viewing you, Joe, watching this on YouTube, and they'll be looking at the books on the shelf there, and it's a little bit hard to see the titles, but they'll be trying. I know they will. And somewhere, if it's not there, somewhere is the very first book that started your book collection was by Phineas Parkes Quimby, and a signed copy nonetheless. And he's thought to be the father, is he not, of New Thought. Tell us about how you came across the book and how you've become obsessed about collecting old vintage books.
Wow, those are big questions right there. Well, first of all, I love Neville. Neville Goddard has influenced a lot of people kind of quietly, but these days, because Wayne Dyer talked about him when he was alive and I've written about him, more people know who Neville is. But for the longest time, it was kind of underground. And Neville's big claim to fame is he kind of taught an advanced visualization technique. And the way I explain it is, some people will say, to get what you want, to manifest your goals, sit here and visualize it. Visualize it coming to you. Visualize it being accomplished. And that's powerful. We know from science that imagery programs the brain. And from an esoteric standpoint, it sends a message out to the universe. But Neville went one step further. He said, imagine it's already done. In fact, imagine it was done yesterday. And so you're a day past your manifestation. What does it feel like to already have the thing that you were longing for? I have a lot of his books that were signed by him. And he signed them with phrases like assumption hardens into fact. Assumption hardens into fact. And what he was referring to is if you assume that the desire you want is already done, you no longer have a desire or a want for it. You have the concrete, holographic kind of physical experience of it being already complete. And this sends a very different message to the brain. Now the brain goes, oh, we have to manufacture that because he already believes it's real. And it goes out into the universe. And it's this, he said imagination was God. And that imagination was actually creating what it is that you want. So instead of pushing it off in the distance with visualization, saying it's got to be here one day, for example, I'm a car guy. And if I wanted a new car, using the old school method of visualization, which still works, I'd sit here and imagine getting the car, driving over there, picking it up. But with the Nevilleizing, which is the word I coined, Nevilleizing, using Neville's material, I would imagine I drove the car this morning. I got in it, put my hands on the wheel, I started it up, I heard the vroom, I stepped on the gas pedal, and I shot down the road. You know, and now I'm telling you what in fact, I got chills on me right now. I guess I have a new car coming soon. so yeah. And so I learned to practice Nevilleizing, and Nevilleizing is the fourth step in my 5-step program in the Attractor Factor. So I have done a big, I hope, service to Neville by promoting him and using him. As for collecting the books, there's Neville books behind me. There's a lot of Napoleon Hill books behind me. There's some of my own titles behind me. There's some ancient Stoicism books behind me, because the last 2 years, you talk about bouncing back from adversity. I've had some pretty trying times. And if we get a chance to talk about it, I'll bring that up. Yeah. But going back to books, books are still my friends. I read P.T. Barnum's autobiography and became so mesmerized by him. I read everything about him. I collected books written by him and signed by him. And I ended up writing a book on P.T. Barnum called There's a Customer Born Every Minute.
Highly recommended. Highly recommended. Excuse me for interrupting.
Oh, thank you.
Not only did you write the book, you went to his gravesite, and there's a story there too, isn't there?
There is.
How you were led to that gravesite.
I did. I went to the gravesite, which I thought was going to be a giant, egotistical marker that went to the sky, and there was a statue of P.T. Barnum, which for most other people of that caliber and his reputation, it would have been that way. But in reality, he had a little tiny stone marker, a little concrete marker that said P.T. Barnum, and it had his dates. And then it had the phrase on it, and this is worth mentioning, that he lived by. And this is really a takeaway for this whole interview. If people get this lesson, the phrase he said was, "Not my will, but thine be done." This is P.T. Barnum saying this. Most people just think he was a shyster, or he said there's a sucker born every minute. He didn't say it. He didn't write it. He didn't act it. He was certainly into practical jokes. He was certainly into entertaining the masses. But in the 1800s, he was the Walt Disney of the planet. And so he used what was available to him. And even though he went through tragedy, he lost his wife, he lost his museum to fires twice, he went through he went through bankruptcy, he went through a lot of challenges, he still had the refrain, "Not my will, but thine be done." Then he'd get up, rebuild, marry again, and move on with his life to live to be 80-some years old. So when I collect these books, these people are alive to me. I have books by Mark Twain, who's also influenced me. I have things that he signed. And whenever I hold a Mark Twain or a Neville or Phineas or any of these different people, Napoleon Hill, I have signed books. When I hold them, I'm that much more connected to them. That's the easy, quick answer, is that I feel their life because they held and signed that book. That's one reason that I would collect.
Well, I'm an absolute believer. You're preaching to the converted here, that's for sure, because I know when you hold a book that was written or published over 100 years ago and you, quote unquote, feel connected to the author, that's because you are connected to the author, to the energy, and you and I know that, but maybe somebody's watching you now, Dr. Joe, or listening to the recording, and they're hearing or seeing you for the very first time. They're learning about Dr. Joe Vitale for the first time now, and I'm so glad that we're able to bring you, the audience, some insights into the background of what Dr. Joe Vitale became. But you did say, I think actually your quote, everybody goes through something. I might have paraphrased it incorrectly, but you do say that somewhere, and I can't remember where. But everybody.
I say it a lot, and actually, I wrote a song called "Everybody's Going Through Something."
That's it.
And it's one of the there's a YouTube video, a music video of that song that I wrote and recorded. In fact, it was almost my very first song that I ever wrote, and it was because I was reflecting and realizing, literally, we're all going through something. Literally. None of us are on a total unicorns and ice cream and money falls from the sky kind of a lifestyle. We all have challenges. We all have bumps. They're different for each person. But when we realize everybody's going through something, it can make our heart a little kinder. It can make us a little more understanding. It can make us open our hearts to the planet when we realize that, yeah, you're going through something. I'm going through something. You're going through something. But everybody is. Yeah. That kind of creates a rapport and unifies us. And then, of course, we can help each other.
I love it. How refreshing that is too, because, you know, to the skeptics or those who want to believe but just can't quite get themselves there, when I say believe, law of attraction, all the stuff that you write about and that you teach, and you're a spiritual teacher and you speak about when you can, and we'll come back to that. I've lost my train of thought, so I'll get back. I'll move on.
Well, let me look at that while you go looking for your train of thought there. The law of attraction is misunderstood by the vast majority of people. We can thank the movie The Secret for bringing the law of attraction to the masses. The law of attraction has been in books. I have it in some of my books that are from the 1800s. It's been around for a very long time. Even the phrase has been around. But the average person doesn't read that many books, and certainly doesn't read books from the 1800s as a regular thing. But the movie The Secret came out, and The Secret's all about the law of attraction. But the problem is it's only an introduction to an idea. That's it. It's not the be-all. It's not the end-all. She never came out with volume 2 or 3 in the movie series. She certainly came out with a lot of books. But to understand the law of attraction on the deeper level and the mechanics of it, you really need to do a deep dive. My short answer is the law of attraction is a law. It is real. It's working for every single person, but most of us are using it unconsciously, so it's working by default. A lot of people who say that it doesn't work for them, I'll just say, do you ever worry? Do you ever get concerned and preoccupy with your thinking about things that could go wrong? You're using the law of attraction. You're using the very elements of the law of attraction, but you're using them for a negative purpose, not for choosing with intention what you would like to have, do, or be. And then the other thing that's really important is to understand the law of attraction isn't working on your conscious thoughts. Your conscious thoughts are the weakest in all of the thinking and all of the mechanics that goes on in your brain. The conscious thought is the tip of the iceberg, and it feels and thinks and leads you to believe it's in charge. It doesn't know squat. There's the subconscious, and then the unconscious, and then there's a collective unconscious. And for the most part, what we're attracting is what we unconsciously believe and expect with feeling. If we want to actually take control of the law of attraction, we need to do the deeper work and change these subconscious, unconscious beliefs. When we do that, then you can pretty much have, do, or be whatever it is that you can imagine.
I know in one of your programs or books, you say that the law of attraction is actually a secondary, not a primary law. The primary law, quoting you, paraphrasing, is energy, vibration, and frequency.
Yes.
Nikola Tesla. Well, okay, so for those of us who know Dr. Joe Vitale and his work, not only his prolific writing and publishing, but of more recent years, his musical talents, his interest in producing music. And in fact, Joe, I read you saying that a standing ovation you received for a live performance you did with your band was you actually said it was the biggest moment for you in your career. Why is
it
that?
Was.
Why
it
is
was. It's important to talk about it for a minute because, again, I'm thinking of all the people that are still confused about the law of attraction or self-improvement or how to get the results that they want, no matter what they're using in their lives. So when I decided to be a musician, it was when I was turning 60. I'm 67 right now, so it was like 7 years ago. And I had no musical training, no musical experience. I did play a little harmonica, mostly around a campfire kind of a thing. I had guitars, but I knew 3 chords, never sang in a shower, karaoke, or behind the wheel of the car. But I decided I really want to be a musician. I really want to record my own album. And so I declared that as my intention, which in the self-help world, law of attraction world, that's the first thing you do. But what happened to me next was terror, was fear. All of my self-doubts, all of my concerns, all of the limitations, all the stuff in the subconscious mind that said you can't do that or you shouldn't do that surfaced into my conscious mind. Now, here's the thing I want everybody to understand. I'm 60 years old at that point. I was already in the movie The Secret. I've already written 60 or 70 books. I've already told the world how to create your reality. And here I am deciding to create myself as a musician, almost not doing it because of fear. And so I've told people, whenever you go to do something you've never done before, you're going to feel fear. You're leaving your comfort zone, so it will feel uncomfortable. So knowing that, I could have stopped. But I thought, well, how's that going to look? If I'm the law of attraction guy and I go, well, I can attract everything but being a musician. I just can't do that. But I thought, no, we have to do that. We have to do that. And then I use the very tools I write about, I talk about, that I teach. And those tools are clearing techniques. They're to clear that subconscious stuff that's in the way of what you want. As I cleared it, magic happens. And this is the other thing that I always tell people. When you clear the blocks to what you want, you accelerate the creation of what you want. Mm-hmm. There's no more lagging. There's no more sluggishness. So there's no more stopping, because what was slowing you and stopping you was in your own mind. It was the subconscious. So when I got rid of that, I created 15 albums in 7 years. 15 albums. Yeah. 6 of them singer-songwriter albums. 2 were in Rolling Stone magazine. Some of my music's been used as soundtracks for movie. There's another movie I'm being filmed for in a few weeks. They want to use one of the songs as in the soundtrack for that. Some of my songs were nominated for the Posy Award, which is the Grammys of positive music. All of I'm just saying all of this to show, when you go for something you've never done before, you're going to feel fear. When you clear the fear and the subconscious beliefs, you go on to create what you want. And you do it at an accelerated rate that will dazzle everybody around you, including yourself. So one of the things on my list was to perform live. That scared me even more. To be on stage as a singer-songwriter with my band, and my band that I gathered, I called them the Band of Legends. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm not. I'm brand new. I'm the newbie here. I'm green. Plus, I had never been on stage as a singer. They've been on stage for decades, but they wanted me. They almost shamed me into doing it. They said, oh, you got 15 albums. You should go on stage and go and sing. This is what you secretly want to do anyway. And so, again, I set the intention. I'm going to perform live in front of a real audience, living, breathing audience, paying audience. And do it with my Band of Legends. And I'm the lead singer, lead guitar player. They're my songs, all of this. And I said, I'm going to film it I'll be able to learn from it. And if it comes out all right, I'll have something to share or sell, depending on what goes on. And then what happens? Fear, terror. I wanted to find some way out of it. That's how much I was shaking in my boots. And I have friends that I turn to that are in the music business, including my band of legends. And I kept asking for advice. Tell me the secret. Tell me the one thing that'll get me through this. And I remember I took a course with Usher. I didn't even know who Usher was at the time, but it was a master class. And Usher is a superstar on the level of what Michael Jackson would have been. And Usher was profound. He said, you can practice, you can memorize your songs, you can visualize, you can do all the things you know to do to give your best effort, your best performance. And he says, but I'm here to tell you, something will go wrong. And that was a turning point, because he said, if you expect something to go wrong, when that something happens, you won't be derailed. It won't stop you. You'll be able to continue and go on with the show. And he told stories of having to do a 2-hour concert, a physical one where he's dancing and singing and all of this heavy stuff. And he broke a rib on the first number. He broke a rib. He went on with the show for the next 2 hours anyway. And so I took it in and I thought, okay, Usher's telling me something could go wrong. As long as I'm aware that there could be something, it won't stop me. And of course, that night there was a rainstorm. People that were supposed to be there weren't there. Some of the equipment was missing. There were all kind of little things. But I kind of laughed thinking, Usher said something would go wrong. And I went on, delivered my show. My band supported me. We got video on YouTube of it. And I did get a standing ovation at the end. There's lessons in all of these stories, Mike. I hope people listen, take notes, and rewatch this.
Oh, I certainly will be encouraging to do so, Joe. And congratulations on your standing ovation, and also that it's had such an impact on you. Even the guru, Dr. Joe Vitale, can still be human, guys and gals, watching. And let's get to that human side of things, because you mentioned a little earlier on that the last 2 years, like for many of us, has rattled the ground under our feet, and life has become quite different for almost everybody in one way or another. We're all going through something, quote unquote. Joe, I'll let you tell your story in the way you want to about what the last 2 years has been like for you, and how have you come back, because you are coming back.
And I have come back. In fact, right now, I'm going on the cover of 3 different magazines, all at the same time. I'm on the cover of Law of Attraction magazine right now. I'm going to be on the cover of Think and Grow Rich magazine, and I'm going to be on the cover of another magazine, I think it's called In the Limelight. Plus, I was just invited to be in another movie that I referenced a little bit ago, which is about Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and I'm excited about it. Plus, I'm working on my music again. Plus, I just bought a house and just moved into it. And so I'm kind of giving you the rosy side here to show that, the sun does come out again and shines bright. The last 2 years, okay, I filed for divorce and was willing to give my ex everything because I knew it would hurt her, but I was trying to make it easy. That was not accepted. She began a 2-year persecution of my life and business, and ran through $1 million in attorney fees looking for different things she accused me of. Forced this divorce all the way to a trial. And 2 days into the trial, the judge stopped it and told my ex, you don't have a case. This is 2 years of pain, of confusion, of emotional and financial drain. During those 2 years, I developed a new relationship with a woman who developed neural Lyme disease and pretty much was on her deathbed, and I was her caretaker. And I moved into her 1-bedroom apartment while going through this divorce. So you can kind of imagine how this is tearing me wide open. There's the divorce. There's the emotional part of it. There is the guilt, the resentment, the experience I'm going through. Then there's a new relationship with the high of a new relationship, but also her needing care. And during the same time, my father dies. My best friend dies. A family member attempts suicide. And a pandemic crawls across the planet, basically wiping out my biggest income, which is from traveling and speaking. I had just gone to Russia, I had been to the Ukraine, and I was in Iran. Iran was the last country I had been to. And in fact, just got out in the nick of time because their country and our country started warring, and goes all over the place with this. Mm-hmm. And so this is 2 years, Mike, 2 years of me getting up every day going, how am I going to get through today? 2 years of going through the feelings of grief, the grief for an old relationship, the grief for my father, the grief for my best friend, the grief for and confusion over a family member wanting to end his own life, and going through the pandemic and having to juggle trying to sell one house, living in a one-bedroom apartment, and then wondering what the future is going to hold. So all of this, okay, this is a big ball of agony. And I would be lying to you if I said, oh, I just get up every day and put on a happy face, look for the sunshine, and did affirmations every day. No. One of the things that helped me was stoicism, because I was looking, it's like, what is here to help me? Yep. And stoicism, they lived through far worse times than we did. They lived through atrocious times. What they went through is almost unimaginable. And yet they had to find a way to survive, if not empower themselves. And Marcus Aurelius, who was considered the poster boy for Stoicism, was the ancient emperor who really did his best to do good. And he had these quotes that would stick with me. And one of them was, if it's endurable, then endure it and stop complaining. And I remember I would go for walks at night in the dark on the streets, and just kind of talking to God and reflecting over my life and going, okay, is this endurable? Is the divorce, is the grief, is the confusion, is the unknown endurable? Yes. I don't want to endure it, but is it endurable? Yes. All right, then endure it. That would be one of the things. And another quote that came from Marcus Aurelius was the idea that stop arguing what a good man is. Be one. And I'd take that in because the statement would have this hidden understanding that there's no argument. You already know the right thing to do. It's already in you. Instead of arguing about it, overthinking it, philosophizing over it, just realize you know what a good man is. Go ahead and be one. And then Seneca deeply influenced me, another great Stoic, and his letters to a Stoic, or letters from a Stoic, were wonderful. And I remember one quote really stuck with me. He said, it's all in your head. You have the power to make things seem hard or easy or even amusing. It's your choice. And I remember the word seem in there. You have the power to make things seem hard or easy or amusing. That didn't say that the things I was going through were to be dismissed. They were real things I was going through. But what he was saying is you have the power to make them seem differently than what you're possibly naturally or reactionarily looking at. And you can look at it and go, it's hard. That's a default for almost all of us. You're going through a divorce, that's hard. You're going through the loss of your father, that's hard. That's a default. But what if you look at it as good? You have a choice. It could be hard. It could be easy. Well, maybe this is easy. That opens your mind to find another way. And then the big leap is, can you find it to be amusing? And at times you go, how is death amusing? How is the COVID amusing? How is the loss of income amusing? Well, I, like many people, I've ended up watching a lot of Netflix. And I saw a bunch of Jerry Seinfeld's show that he has on Netflix called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
Yeah.
And Jerry Seinfeld lives for the joke. He almost doesn't care about anything. I know he's a family man. I know he has kids. I know he's married. So I'm sure he, in that world, shows his love. But for the rest of us, he only lives for the joke. And there were times where he was talking about concentration camps. And he was talking with Jon Stewart, and they were both laughing. They're both Jewish, and they were both laughing about it. They were finding humor. And then they were talking about people who die. And they were making jokes almost instantly over people who had just died. And you started to realize, right or wrong, this is how they think. And if this possibility is there, then Seneca is right. I can look at whatever's going on in my life as hard or easy or even amusing. So all of this is to say, Stoicism helped me. And I'll say one more thing. Early on in the divorce, and I was truly upset and confused. I thought, this should be easy. This really should be over. I've offered everything. I just walk away. And I asked my attorney, I said, you've been doing this for, I don't know how long, for years, maybe decades. You've seen all kinds of cases. You've seen people go through all kinds of horrible situations. I said, what is the best advice you've heard on getting through this? And he paused, and then he said, focus on the future. Focus on the future, which from law of attraction, self-help, Neville, power of intention is all about, what do you want? What is your goal? What is your outcome? What is your intention? What do you want to have, do, or be? Focus on what's next. Focus on the future. And so whenever my mind would get stuck in the darkness, I'd remember Marcus Aurelius, I'd remember Seneca, I'd remember my attorney, and I'd go, where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? Are places like this today with Mike.
Oh, how wonderful. Dr. Joe Vitale, excuse me. Thank you very much for being so open and telling and sharing deeply personal parts of your life over the past 2 years. Everybody's going through something. Dr. Joe Vitale has been going through something. Anyone who knows my story knows that I've been through something. You who's watching or listening to the recording of Dr. Joe Vitale may be going through something right now. And as Joe said just 5 or 10 minutes ago, he hopes that you might replay this, because there will be something that you will have missed on the first viewing or first hearing. And I would encourage you to follow Joe's suggestion, because he's just dropped some pearls of wisdom there, which we would expect nothing else from Dr. Joe Vitale. And might I just throw in, Joe, that I've got up on my wall here a quote from, so I'm looking at the wall behind my computer, if I may just refer to it. It's a quote from Marcus Aurelius from his book, from his Meditations. Today I escaped from anxiety, or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside.
Yeah.
And Stoicism, that's interesting. So do we expect a book from Dr. Joe Vitale in the next couple of years which is going to focus on Stoicism?
I don't know. You know, during this whole 2-year divorce process, I wrote a book. And I don't know if it was just for therapy for me, or it could be my blockbuster for the world. I don't really know. I do talk about Stoicism in there, but I talk about a lot of things because I was struggling, and I put my really raw struggle in that book. So I can't say right now. I don't know. Okay.
Well, our time's up, and I'm respectful of your time, Dr. Joe, for joining me. Excuse me again, please.
My pleasure.
Joining our audience on the Comeback Coach podcast. There's questions and things here that I had ready to ask you, but time flies when you're having fun, and I've just had fun, and I know the people watching this now. Joe, with all that you offer and all of your books and all of the things that I'm going to mention in the show notes, is there something that you'd like to mention that you're offering at the moment? Where would you like people to go right now to see more about Dr. Joe?
Well, I put together a package specifically for your fan base, all the people who love you and who are watching and listening. And it's a 3-package, $3 offer. And this, to me, is the definitive guide to the law of attraction, understanding how the mind works, creating your own reality, the science of manifestation, Nevilleizing. I put everything into this. Right. And $3, I've learned that people need to pay to respect. Yeah. So $3, a token amount of money for something that I think is pure transformation. And it's all explained at zerolimitsmethod.com, zerolimitsmethod.com. 3 programs, $3, and there's a bonus item that's worth about $1,000. So any way you look at it, you should go take a look.
A big thank you for putting that together, and a big thank you for offering it to the audience of this show. And I'll have the website that you've just mentioned, zerolimitsmethod.com, in the show notes. So if you watching or listening to this are wondering or trying to remember what that is, don't try and remember. Just go to the show notes. There'll be a clickable link there for you. And all you've got to find is $3 for 3 packages plus a bonus. Dr. Joe Vitale, you don't know how much I've been looking forward to this, and I know I've got some people who follow me who have been looking forward to it as well. So thank you again. It's been an honour and a pleasure to talking with you, and congratulations on your standing ovation. I'm so thrilled that meant so much to you, and good on you for kicking ass and getting back and more power to you, and more power to you too in the audience. And until next time, Dr. Joe, all the best until next time. This is Mike Searles signing off from speaking with the one and the only Dr. Joe Vitale.
Thank you. Godspeed to all of you.